Okay, let's give it one more minute. It's 11:59. We'll wait for anyone to jump in because we advertised noon. All right, good afternoon. My name is Tom DeKaiser. Welcome to our first Sinking Fund Zoom presentation. This is an informational session for the voters to consider a sinking fund on November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th. I'm going to jump right in. Again, this is recorded. We're hoping that if anyone cannot make it today, that they will perhaps tune in to the recording, and hopefully we can catch them the next time because we'll be offering a few more of these opportunities to get information on this sinking fund. Slide number one, I'd like to call attention to what we call a targeted approach to facility management.
You and I, Tom Ria, and someone, Jay Armstrong.
Wow, that sounds like Jill Henry. um, slide number one is what we call a targeted approach. I'm going to address this right now and hope that it can I can piggyback off of it later in the slideshow. But our original ask for a bond in August failed, and I'll touch on that in a minute. But when I talk about a targeted approach to facility management, we're really being specific about certain needs. Obviously, we went from a large amount of money to a smaller amount of money, and the only way to get the things done that need to be repaired here is to really go after them very surgically. We're not going to be asking for whole-scale replacements of things. So that's a theme that'll come up a few times in this presentation. Let's go to the next slide. So just to recap why we're here, we at Whitmore Lake Public Schools have been doing lots of repairs on all of our buildings. We have three main campuses, not including some of our athletic properties that we use. Three main building campuses. Each of them is struggling to keep up. We've got about a 20-year-old building, about a 40-year-old building, and about a 60-year-old building. And the repairs that were needed started to exceed our resources. So we've contacted an architect and a construction team. They did a facility assessment that began in the fall of 2002, and they identified approximately $80 million worth of repairs and replacements of equipment. That was supposed to extend the lifespan of this district's buildings by over 30 years. We brought it to the voters in August, and it failed. But the need has not gone away. It seemed like our voters did not want to support that amount of money. We were asking for $53.5 million for 22 years. The feedback we got was that it was too much and for too long. So we started scaling back and looking at what we could do if we went for a smaller amount of money for fewer years. And that's where the idea of a sinking fund came up. Next slide, please. So the November 5th ballot question will be, will you support a 1.5 mil sinking fund for 10 years? This type of tax would generate about $1 million a year, a little bit more in later years, giving us a little over $10 million for 10 years. Now, that's significantly less than the amount that we were asking for. I'll touch on that later. But I wanted you to know how that would impact you as a homeowner and a voter in this district. If you had a taxable value on a home of $200,000, this tax request for 10 years would be $300 a year. That's approximately $25 a month. So what do we plan on doing with that that money that this sinking fund would generate? We got to go right back to some of the same things that were on our bond. Our HVAC infrastructure in our bond was a $30 million price tag. And what we were looking for was a significant amount of replacement, brand new replacement of equipment. And so the cost was considerably higher. We when that failed, we scaled way back. We're going to what's called a targeted approach. Our targeted approach is basically we're going to put a lot of early money, a few $1,000,000 into a control system. The control system will allow us to identify which units aren't working correctly, and then do a targeted replacement on those. It's a little bit more of an old school approach. You try to fix what you currently have, but first you have to identify what's not working. And that's a problem, an immediate problem we have in their district. It's why I'm going right back and really asking our voters to consider this again, because we want to know what's not working. We can't just operate blind here. And that's what's going on with our HVAC system. So a more targeted approach, it costs less money because we're hoping that we can identify broken pieces of equipment and just replace them strategically. Our safety and security, we still have to have a solution for our elementary school. We would like a secure vestibule. We have plans for it that we drew up in the last bond, and we'd like to use some of that, some of those same plans and modify that entryway to make it more secure. All of our campuses can enhance some of their security, so some of the sinking fund dollars will go to those areas as well. Another area that you just cannot ignore when you come onto our campuses is sidewalks and parking lots. These areas do cost, these areas of repair and replacement cost a lot of money. And we're hoping that if we wait a few years and take some of this sinking fund and invest it wisely, we can then, after a few years of savings, address the neediest parts of our parking lot and put together a good maintenance plan on what's existing. And then lastly, we still continue to have ongoing repairs, and we need buses. We've got a pretty good fleet right now, but the sinking fund will allow, and you'll read in the ballot language, that it will allow for the purchase of vehicles. Next slide, please. This is an area I really want people to just look at this slide and let it sink in a little bit and identify any questions that they might have with it, because people have really identified that maybe we haven't managed our money well, and that's why we're asking for this. I have to point out here that in 10 years, Whitmore Lake went from a zero fund balance to over $1 million of fund balance. But that's general fund, and the general fund is the instructional fund. What your school board is really trying to preserve is those dollars for the classroom. They do not want to spend instructional dollars on fixing potholes. I don't know who would. So this additional sinking fund is really trying to preserve that instructional general fund, which is very healthy and very stable, and it's really the key to our long-term stability in this district. I think if you look at how we've spent money in our sinking fund over the past several years, I mean, it's been very efficient, but it's going quickly. In the last 6 weeks, we have enhanced some security, spent money there with sinking fund. We've done road and sidewalk repairs on our sites. We've replaced an AC unit, an air conditioning unit. We've replaced a sewer pump at the Main Street campus, a hot water heater at the high school, or at Main Street campus rather, a water softener at the high school. And we have had to repair flood damage at both the Main Street campus and our elementary school. All of that in the last 6 weeks with the sinking fund. If we didn't have that current sinking fund, which is expiring soon, we'd have to take out of that instructional fund. This is a very important revenue ask of our voters. Please keep that in mind. A lot of people talk about our use of our recreational fund lately. Again, just in the last 6 weeks. We have invested in roads and repairs and maintenance at Jennings Road. We've fixed fields. We're actually building a new ball field at Jennings Road. We've demoed bleachers and field press boxes at Jennings Road. We've expanded our K-12 programming, and it's full. Our K-12 programs are full. They did very well through the summer, and they're full going into the fall. Our adult programming is not full. We subsidize that with our rec funds. Let's get out there, adults, and fill those programs. But we're using it well. We're providing opportunities for this community, and we want our facilities to match those opportunities. Another thing I want to talk about is enrollment. The whole state of Michigan has lost kids. It's going down in population. All the schools around us have lost kids. Whitmore Lake is not an exception to that. The difference with Whitmore Lake is we don't continue to lose students. We're actually slowly growing our enrollment. And where are we seeing the biggest enrollment? We're seeing it at our early childhood and preschool centers. We've got over 140% increases in those areas. Our elementary school is due to increase 15% over the next couple of years. Our 5-year projection for K-12 is 20%. So this is all good news, but you have to have, again, facilities to match this. And I do like to talk about the future, because in the next 10 years, when this growth comes, you're going to see a lot of new people in the district. You'll have new maintenance people, new mechanics, new bus drivers. You'll have people trying to operate a school system with very little institutional knowledge. We'd like to make these repairs and replacements of equipment before we lose those people to retirement. And so new people can come in and be up to speed. This is part of what I call succession planning. It's very important to our Board of Education. They want to know, the board wants to know that we have a plan for the future, not just next year, but for the next decade. So this school system will be viable for years to come. Very, very important component of all this. And so our future, a big part of asking for these types of revenue really is just looking toward the future. We do have immediate needs, but we want to plan and prepare for what's coming next. That's it for all of my talking. I'm hoping I have some questions that come through the chat. While we're thinking about those questions, please know that what we're asking you to consider is a sinking fund on November 5th. There'll be a handful of other tax items on this ballot, as well as a lot of individual decisions about people seeking office. It's important for you to understand, from my perspective, that of all the proposals, only one of them is a new tax in Washtenaw County, and Green Oak has a couple of new ones. The rest of them are all renewals. So this is a 1.5 mil new tax. Again, of everything else you see, please understand, it's just most of them are renewals. We do have a couple of chat questions. As I get those ready on my screen, I'd like to remind people that we have 4 more Zoom sessions. Plus, I've got a board meeting coming up in October. So opportunities for people to ask questions. Try to pull up a chat question, and I'm just not seeing it.
There's a question from Greg. Tom, what would happen if the sinking fund ask doesn't pass in November?
So this is a new sinking fund. We have an existing sinking fund that goes on for a couple more years. That we'd have to leverage those dollars. Again, we're using them rapidly. That sinking fund generates about $450,000 a year. We have currently less than $50,000 in it going into another cycle. So it will regenerate, but just to give you an idea, we've already spent in 1 year $400,000. That's just on repairs. So we'd really have to leverage it hard, and maybe eliminate of the 4 things that I put out there: HVAC, safety and security, roads and sidewalks, and buses, we might have to eliminate 2, maybe 3 of them and just focus on the top priority. Some other questions that have come in previously to this that I wanted to address. The difference between a bond and a sinking fund. This is a really good question. Our bond that was requested of our voters in August was $53.5 million. A bond is a very big loan with which you use to immediately address your needs. So it was a 22-year bond, but we're getting the money up front so we can take care of things almost immediately within 3 years. But then we have to pay it all back. And with that size loan, you have to also, the voters have to understand that they're paying back interest and legal and bond fees that go with it. So not all of that 53.5 million was going to go into our facilities. A sinking fund is different. You're collecting less money, but you're not worrying about those fees and interest payments. They're not there. But you do have to be creative with how you leverage it. In fact, we'd probably have to take out an early advance, which is allowable on sinking funds, to address our first needs. Why is the district asking for so much less than in August? Well, the need's still there. Like I said in one of the previous slides, they identified over $80 million of repairs when they did our facility assessment. Our board thought that to generate that much money, we'd have to tax our residents too much. We scaled it back to a 2.55 mil vote, which would generate over 50 million. That was rejected. And the feedback we got was that it was too much money for too many years. So 1.5 mils on a sinking fund is going to generate far less, but it is a little bit, it forces us really to be a little more old school in our approach to repairing things. We're going to identify what's broken. We're going to try to make those major repairs. And if not, we'll be strategic about buying new equipment. Hopefully, we won't have to replace lots of new equipment early on in the process, and that'll preserve or at least prevent us from having to spend large amounts of money. The major difference is with that approach is the bond was going to just replace everything with new, and we're going to start off with new equipment. We're going to have to deal with the old for a while and repair it as necessary and replace if absolutely necessary. All right. November 5th. We've got more Zoom meetings coming up. Please participate. If you have questions, we'll be recording this and posting this on our website. And as always, if you have specific questions that you weren't able to ask on this recording, please email me at tom.dekaiser@wlps.net.
Hey, Tom, could I ask a question?
Of course you can.
Okay, great. So this is, I know it's difficult to make these kind of look into the future, but obviously it's unfortunate that the bond didn't pass this last time around. And just looking at just the overall sinking fund ask now, I mean, is this something that, it feels like we're doing just the bare minimum. I mean, is this like a cadence every 3 to 5 years? We're going to ask for more and just whenever it's needed, or is there maybe a plan to do a bond in 5 years? I just feel like right now, just with the landscape, with the political landscape, and just the state of the economy, asking a big bond was a difficult ask, even though it was needed. But I just feel like, is there any pulse on the future as to where do we go, or is it just kind of we'll cross that bridge when we get there?
What I'm recommending the board do is they hold off on a major bond, use this sinking fund and leverage the dollars that you can get from it to wait until your current debt levy on your last 2003 bond runs out. That'll be in about 10 years. So a 10-year sinking fund matches up with what you have on your current debt levy, which is 8.5 mils. So in 10 years, that drops off. Now you're going to be much more as a community school, you'll be much more able to pass a bond to address major needs in the future, and which is what most school districts do. The ones around this that have been successful in passing bonds advertise, you'll hear them say it's not a new tax. Well, it is really, but the old one just dropped off. So you're not paying
Right.
new, you're paying the same amount. Why I didn't want to wait, Greg, 10 years to do that is cost escalation. I felt
Right.
that if we added on a little bit right now to our debt levy, you'd get a lot more done as opposed to waiting for 10 years. But clearly the voters feel taxed out. So this
Right.
is a much more scaled back approach. The idea is to just use it, leverage it creatively, and get you to that 10-year mark.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Yep. Thank you for participating. If there's no more questions, we'll end this Zoom session for now and hope that people jump in next time and we can review some of this and hopefully get more questions.